The BlackBerry Key 1 was a retro-styled, Android-powered phone that seemed like a love letter to the brand's most dedicated fans. The new BlackBerry Motion is a little different. It trades the keyboard and the cramped display for a full touchscreen design that has a personality distinct from the Alcatel Idol knockoffs we got last year. But how well does the BlackBerry Motion actually hold up to scrutiny? Let's take a closer look. But first, a quick note. As we're making this video, we're not exactly sure when or even if the BlackBerry Motion is going to land in the US. It's available in Canada right now for 600 Canadian dollars, which works out to about 470 US dollars, so I'm going to compare it to other devices in that price range. Got it? Cool. Now it's a little odd, but I actually dig the BlackBerry Motion's design. It's conservative in that way BlackBerrys always are, but we're left with a handsome blend of glass and aluminum and plastic that comes together surprisingly well. Strangely, BlackBerry Mobile rounded the phone's top edge while leaving the bottom one flat, which gives the Motion its own sense of character. I think the phone looks better than it feels though. The Motion sides make the thing feel a bit boxy and utilitarian when you're holding it. At least it's rated IP67 for water and dust resistance. On the bottom you'll find the USB-C port and headphone jack, while the volume rocker, sleep-wake button, and the convenience key are stuck on the phone's right side. Now, if you're anything like me, you're going to find the placement of the convenience key a little less than convenient because it's right where you'd expect the power button to be. The convenience key is even textured, so you can identify it without looking, but it's been almost 2 weeks, and I still sometimes mash the wrong button when I'm trying to wake the phone up. Oh, and don't bother getting your hopes up. This is definitely not a bezel-less phone. There is a lot of space beneath the display for the capacitive navigation keys and the home button fingerprint sensor combo. Having a clicky home button is sort of a trip after getting used to phones like the iPhone X, but it gets the job done, and I really appreciate that. I just wish the fingerprint sensor wasn't so flaky. It has a hard time IDing my thumb when it's even just a little bit sweaty. Let's check out the screen itself. The Motion's 5.5-inch display runs at 1080p, and it features pleasant, if not exactly exciting colors. Viewing angles were pretty good too, and if it sounds like I'm running out of things to say about the screen, you'd be right. It's a perfectly serviceable, perfectly unremarkable display. Same goes for the speaker, actually. It can pump out the jams with decent volume, but audio tends to sound a little thin and lifeless. Good thing there's a headphone jack here. Meanwhile, the software is just what you'd expect from an Android-powered BlackBerry. The Motion will feel very familiar if you're coming from the Key 1, from the hub that collects all of your incoming messages into a single inbox to the Productivity tab, which lets you glance at your calendar appointments and to-do list. And then there's our old friend DTech, an app that, once again, rates how secure the Motion is at any given time. It hasn't really changed since it debuted on the BlackBerry Priv, but it's still useful for managing app permissions, and it's not a bad crash course into the basics of mobile security either. The convenience key on the right side of the phone didn't work the way I expected it to. The way the software is set up, if you assign one action to it, clicking the key performs said action. Easy enough. The thing is, you can assign up to 3 actions to the key, and if you do, you'll get a little pop-up window with those shortcuts next to the button. It's a neat touch, but it does make me miss the Key 1's keyboard a bit. You could use just about every button on that thing's keyboard as a convenience key. The only other new software addition of note is a locker feature that lets you securely store your sensitive files. Moving things into the locker is easy enough. Just open up the Files app and select some things and hit lock. More interesting is how you can snap a photo with the camera using your fingerprint sensor instead of the shutter button. That move sends the resulting shot straight into the locker. It's great if you like to shoot, let's say racy photos, but that's not really my speed. It's just as well too, since the Motion's 12-megapixel camera turned out to be a bit of a disappointment. Under the right conditions, it's capable of producing some relatively impressive-looking photos. When the light is anything less than optimal though, expect some trouble. Your photos are going to look either a little underexposed or overexposed, and I'm not entirely sure why an option to focus before capture is disabled by default. It might make the process of taking the photo a little slower, but guys, the results almost always looked better. And low light performance? Ooh. Colors start to lose their verve very quickly, and focusing can be downright sluggish sometimes. I honestly expected better from the Motion's camera, but as it stands, I think the Key 1 does a better job at photography. At least the 8-megapixel front-facing camera didn't leave me with much to complain about. With the Motion, BlackBerry Mobile once again opted to use a Qualcomm Snapdragon 625 chipset with an Adreno 506 GPU and 4GB of RAM. For those keeping count, yes, that is 1 more gig of RAM than what you got in the Key 1. Anyway, this firmly puts the Motion in the mid-range phone bracket, but I never really felt like I was missing out. There was more than enough horsepower here for me to jump between apps like Slack and Spotify and Gmail and Trello during my workday, and gorgeous games like Tempest were totally playable, if just a little choppy sometimes. The real star of the show, though, is the Motion's massive 4,000 mAh battery. That's one of the largest we've tested this year, and it routinely kept the phone running for 2 full days before needing a recharge. Over quiet weekends when I wasn't multitasking all the time, I almost got the Motion to hit 3 days off a single charge. Guys, this is the life. So yeah, the Motion is actually a pretty good phone. For what it is though, $470 feels a little steep. Phones like the OnePlus 5T and the Essential PH1 both now go for $499, and they're both more powerful machines with eye-catching screens and great designs. The trade-off is security, which BlackBerry obviously takes very seriously, and if you do too, the Motion might be right for you, if it ever gets here. Ultimately, the Motion turned out to be a pleasant surprise. It gets more right than wrong, and it gives me hope that BlackBerry Mobile or TCL or whoever will continue to churn out quality smartphones. I'm just not convinced this is the best smartphone for the price though. Unless you're absolutely obsessed with security, or if you want to pay to keep your beloved phone brand alive, the BlackBerry Motion is ultimately a good phone that just isn't a very good deal.